Boy, I've just been reading news for what seems like a couple hours straight now, trying to narrow down, of all the things that are going on today and this week, what the heck am I going to pick? Because, I don't like to touch on a bunch of different topics at once. My mind doesn't work that way. I much prefer focusing on one thing and really trying to drill down into that. And I guess what I'm going to go with, because there's so many very important things going on, I really want to go back to talking about the boosters, because today, again, is another landmark day. After the small victory last Friday, for, I guess, people who want to put a little bit of brakes, who are a little hesitant, who want to stop and think about what's going on before they go and they shove experimental chemicals into their body. We had a very small victory, and that was the FDA panel not totally green-lighting vaccine booster shots for everybody, citing some examples and saying, you know what, there's some potential risk with some younger people, and we should probably keep an eye on that and tap the brakes a little bit before we just go and shove a whole third round of needles into a bunch of people's arms and think that everything's going to be okay. But that, whatever caution may have been in the air last week has completely been thrown to the wind, as now the CDC director herself has stepped forward to overturn what little resistance the CDC panel, now not to be confused with the FDA panel, was recommending in terms of boosters. And she has overruled them. The CDC panel, approved boosters for people who were 65 plus and people who were at-risk folks, ages 18 to 49. So just kind of what you would expect, old people and the infirmed. But the CDC director overturned their decision, saying, you know what, maybe we should hold off on these booster shots for, younger healthcare workers who are, not particularly at risk, who are healthy people, who have already, they've already taken their first two shots. Maybe we should just hold off, because we don't know necessarily if this booster will do more harm than good. And the CDC director, boy, she very quickly rubber stamped over that and said, nope, we're going to approve this. We're going to throw all caution to the wind. We're not going to take time to think about this. We're not going to wait for more data. We are just going to give everybody as many doses of this new drug as we can. We're just going to keep every few months, we're going to jab you again. And, in the next few months, we're going to shred your old vaccine card, and we're going to say you have to get jabbed again if you want to live a normal life. And make no mistake, by giving their approval to anyone receiving these booster shots, these shots are going to be required for these folks. Right now, it's just going to be healthcare workers, but pretty soon it's going to be the rest of us too. And in time, that will include your children. They're now saying, Pfizer recently released a study saying, it's safe and effective for children. That's their way of saying, we're coming for your kids next. You thought it was bad enough that we wouldn't let you have your job, that we wouldn't let you live your life, to the fullest, without taking our medicine? Well, we're going to force it on your kids next too. And that's why it's so important for people to draw a line. And it's a tougher thing to do for some folks versus others. I mean, again, if you're in the military, you're in a really tough spot. Because if you get dishonorably discharged over this, you are essentially a felon. You're going to be unemployable. You'll never be able to own a gun. You will be a second-class citizen. That's what it means to be dishonorably discharged from the U.S. military or convicted of a felony. You're no longer fully American. There are freedoms that you lose that you can never get back under any circumstances unless you get a presidential pardon. In the case of a felony, I'm not sure if you can pardon a dishonorable discharge, but you probably can. But for a whole lot of us in this country, we do have the ability to draw a line and say, no, we're not doing this. We each have our own ways in which, we can stand up to this. And the more of us do, at this point, that will help give some cover to the folks who are in tougher positions than we are. It's totally transparent that the CDC director, who's a political appointee, is overruling the panel, specifically because the White House determined this is our agenda. We're going to force booster shots into everybody's arms. And so there cannot be any groups who are, not approved to get their boosty shots, because if the CDC and the FDA want to prove these people, from getting them at all, well, then Uncle Joe can't force it on them. The only way he can force it on them is by using the so-called approval of the CDC and the FDA, the wizards of smart, as a club to beat people over the head with. And if he just smacks you upside the head and says safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective enough times, well, then that'll make everything okay. Then Joe can strap you down in a chair and roll up your sleeve and shove as many needles in your arm as you can take until your heart stops. As we learned from Veritas, there are bureaucrats within the federal government who, unsurprisingly, fantasize about these things, who fantasize about blow-darting black people because they're too hesitant. Well, if the blacks aren't smart enough to make the decision on their own, I'll make the decision for them. And just when they're not expecting it, in their necks, it's like you're tranquilizing gorillas, or what was the comparison that the FDA guy actually used? I believe he compared it to sewing Stars of David into the clothes of the unvaccinated, so that everybody could see who they were, and so that they could shame them, and also it makes it easier, so you know who to blow dart. I remember it was only a couple months ago that the Libertarian Party of Kentucky, which has a pretty edgy Twitter account, was just excoriated and ratioed by all of the people like Seth Rogen, I believe, on Twitter, because they tweeted out an image. I can't remember exactly what the details were, but essentially they had a picture of a Star of David sewn onto some Jewish person's clothes from Nazi Germany, and said something about vaccine passports and and vaccine mandates. And essentially said, this is coming, this is where we are. And people say, oh my gosh, how did you have... And now you have someone from the FDA caught on a hot mic. Or not a hot mic, a wire. Making the exact same comparison, gleefully. Of course, always in the name of public health. Frankly, these people should be regarded as what they are. They're the enemies of public health. I think that goes without saying at this point. We've got... Boy, did I talk about the drastic leaks from a few days ago? If I haven't, it's too late now. But the evidence keeps piling up. To me, I was already sufficiently convinced of not only the lab leak theory, but the lab creation theory, the insertion of the spike protein, into the genome of this virus. The term chimeric virus. These are things that should be, without going so far as to upset the YouTube gods. These are key words that everyone should know pretty well by now. And so I think that it's safe to say that we're just being gaslit by a group of very sad little men and women, a group of people who are very, very scared because they created this beast. And they unleashed it on the world, I think unwittingly. But that, of course, is speculation. But I think that's the most common explanation, is that this was, unwittingly released. And now they're trying to cover for it by distracting us, by, constantly blaming us for everything bad that happens. They're projecting, trying to say, oh, it's all your fault. You didn't wear your mask hard enough. You didn't you didn't gleefully accept your vaccines quickly enough or often enough. And they're always trying to put the burden on us of something that they did. They're trying to say, oh, you're a bad person, you need to go do this. If you get sick, it's your fault. If you don't get a shot and you get sick, you should be denied medical care because you didn't listen to what we said. You didn't do as you were told by the people who made you sick. They want you not to think about that. But it's impossible to separate these two things. The people who, claim to have our best interests at heart, who just, who want to do everything they can to make this go away and to make us healthy, are the people who put us in this situation. Those sorts of people should never, be taken seriously in society on this issue or any other issue ever again. They belong in prison. There's nothing more insulting than being lectured by somebody like Anthony Fauci or Peter Daszak about anything to do with public health. Because no one in modern history has directly caused the deaths of more people than these men. Their SARS GMO chimera virus has killed millions of people. They've caused the deaths probably of more people than George W. Bush. And so they're on their way to approaching being in a class of people, like Hitler and Stalin and Mao. They've eclipsed George W. Bush. These people are butchers. They're some of the worst human beings on the planet today. We shouldn't even really laugh at people like Fauci, because these are very sinister folks. The fact that Fauci is able to get out of bed, every day, and he's able to go on TV and speak as if he is some sort of authority on this, that he doesn't feel so much shame within him, that he hasn't, profusely apologized to the families of the millions of dead people, that he hasn't come clean about this. To me, it shows that there's no goodness in him. A good man couldn't continue to lie like this. Not about something this serious. These are the gravest, some of the gravest crimes in human history. And the fact that he isn't afraid to go out in public, that he isn't afraid to appear on television, that he doesn't, that he isn't afraid of being famous and people knowing who he was. If I were Fauci and I knew what I did, I would have, fled to some remote part of the planet a long time ago and just hope that nobody ever recognizes me. I would not continue to go on television day after day after day after day, continue to double down on my now thoroughly debunked lies. It's obvious what he and his ilk are doing. This is what happens when, what Robert Barnes calls the white lab coat crowd is allowed to just, run on a rampage without any real checks on them. You don't have to assume that what these people were doing was intentionally sinister. You don't have to assume that they were working with the Pentagon to create a bioweapon, even though, the evidence does seem to be, continually suggesting that more and more. You don't have to think that at all. You just have to look at the results of what it appears that they have done. And from that, you can conclude these are very, very bad people, because they've done nothing to try and atone for it. They've done nothing to apologize. They haven't, even tried to clean up their own mess. They continue leading us on a wild goose chase, looking for, some magic silver bullet and shouting down anyone coming up with real solutions. They don't want to look for some kind of therapeutic that will help people get over this terrible illness that they unleashed upon the world. They want to find a way to make money from it, from their friends, who in the pharmaceutical industry, who can make a vaccine that they can sell to the people of the world every 6 months, that everybody has to keep getting for the rest of their lives, because that is going to make you a lot more money than just giving someone a drug that helps them get over it and then they have their own natural immunity. No, we must mandate that, 8 billion people on this planet, somewhere around there, somewhere in the single-digit billions, every single one of them has to, every 6 months, or more often, maybe 3 to 6 months, receive a shot in their arm It's disgusting, and it's so hard. It's so hard to think that these people exist and they know what they're doing. So, with that said, if you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this. And we'll see you folks back here tomorrow.